karanasan ko po, tingnan pa namin sa lahat ng video.
Media educators and journalists call to defend press freedom.
Sa karanasan ko po, tingnan pa namin sa lahat ng video.
Media educators and journalists call to defend press freedom.
This corruption in media, no boundaries to
Welcome to News Cafe. I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Over 2 decades ago, then Manila Mayor Mel Lopez was at a loss as to how to foster civic consciousness, civic pride, and civic affection among Manila's eclectic and rapidly rising population. He felt that, first of all, young Manilans needed to know their city better. After all, how can you love a city you don't know? So none other than Nick Joaquin was asked to write a popular history of Manila that the youth would enjoy. And this is how the book Manila, My Manila came to be. Today, as we celebrate the Philippine Declaration of Independence from Spain on June 12, 1898, efforts to popularize history are still underway to encourage younger generations to really know and understand their past. Ivan Mandy of Old Manila Walks takes us through the footprints of Manila history as we rediscover pockets of Manila in a new light. So we are at the San Agustin Church and Monastery, the oldest building in Manila.
Yes.
Tell us more about this. How long?
Well, Intramuros was the heart of colonial Manila. No? So for 400 years, this was Manila.
Yeah.
And this is the Agustinian complex. So it was started in 1571. So technically, it's the oldest stone building in our city existing as it is today.
So this has been restored as we walk through. This is slightly restored from the original 1607 building.
Yes, this is really essentially a product of different building stages from different centuries. So what they are doing right now is that they're trying to bring back the old features of the buildings based on archival documents.
Okay. How are we in terms of preservation? I mean, it's obviously this is private efforts doing this.
Yes, this is actually the church doing it. No, it's not as big as it is in other countries, but you know we are slowly doing our efforts in our own little way. And at least for me, because I'm always here because of my job, you know, I see the efforts of what they're doing in trying to bring back the history of the place using archival documents. So they're bringing back the old details, the old windows, the old...
So these, for example, well, upstairs we'll be seeing different, but these are the original styles.
Yes, yes, and using old materials with, of course, certain concessions to modern technology.
This area looks really new. What exactly has this church been through?
Well, the church has been existing for more than 400 years. Of course, in between that 4 centuries, it has survived several things: earthquakes, typhoons, world wars, revolutions now. And all of these have taken its toll on the complex itself. Of course, add to that, you had restorations which were done in earlier times, which probably were not in tune with the standards of today. A section of the church was bombed. No? Of course, you also have 400 years worth of wear and tear, no? Like people visiting. I mean, the breathing that we have, all of this affects the church. So the church embarked on a restoration program to bring back the monastery based on, if I'm not mistaken, the 1800s design. So they based it on old archival documents, and they tried to put back as much of the details of the church. In short, bringing back the history through the architecture in today's times using modern techniques.
So it's bringing the old and new together, for example, at the windows.
Exactly.
We see the Capiz, original Capiz windows, but you had a compromise here.
Yes.
We have
for example, this window, this glass window was put somewhere in the last few decades ago, no? But originally, if you look at the photos of this monastery in the 1800s, this would have been all Capiz. And for the longest time, the Capiz were taken out. No, but now they're back, and they really add a very nice local flavor to the overall atmosphere of the church.
And you like this atmosphere, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's old, but it doesn't feel old, but it's authentic with the old style.
Right.
No, it's in touch with the old style.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
So San Agustin Church is just one of the 2 remaining churches out of the 7 here in Intramuros.
Yes. No, originally there were around 7 of these structures which represented the 7 orders, Catholic orders, which had their headquarters here. Unfortunately, 5 of them were destroyed, actually 6, but only 1 was rebuilt, which was the cathedral.
Yeah.
So this is the original, one of the original remaining.
So generally everything is still in its original condition.
Yes, it's essentially a product of 400 years worth of reconstructions, restorations, and patching up things.
What style is this? How would you describe
This is one of the most dramatic, personally, interior religious spaces in our city. San Agustin Church now is in the Baroque style, which essentially was the style which was in vogue for the next 300 years we were under Spain.
Yes.
So Baroque is the architecture of drama.
Yes.
So they used every form of art, from paintings to sculpture, just to make you feel the glory of the Christian church.
Right.
When you look it up, it kind of feels like they're actually sticking out.
Yes.
They're like 3D.
Right.
And they're actually carved. But if you look closely, they're not carved. They're actually
just
painted.
paintings,
No?
yes.
Again, it's giving that illusion of the building, making it look bigger than it's supposed to be.
Right.
Because it's hard to carve on wood. So I guess they just painted it on wall to make it look like it's carved.
Yeah. And over here, the choir. This is still working, but this has been restored.
Yes, this is the organ. No, this
Yeah.
is the 1800s organ. It's been restored, I think, a few years ago.
Yeah.
So it's now in good working condition. You can actually play if you want to, and
Yeah.
if you know how.
Yeah. So all of this is now under restoration thanks to the church. They're working on restoration efforts.
Thanks to the Augustinian community, they're slowly trying to bring back the history of the building by putting back or restoring, conserving the artworks inside the structure. And again, it's a product of what? Almost 200 years
Yeah.
of bad air, of
Yeah.
grime, of pollution.
Yeah.
So these things that they did in the 1850s, of course, when you expose them to moisture, to typhoons, then it takes their toll. So now the church is trying to embark on a big conservation project to bring back the original ceilings in its original form as they were painted almost 200 years
Right.
ago. So this is the choir loft. It's the part where they sang back in the during those days.
Yeah.
So you have those chairs which were used for that purpose, among
Right.
others.
So we're sitting on 100-year-old chairs. I hope
Yes,
they don't
from the
crumble.
1700s.
Yeah. So imagine, look how dark this is. This is the original. Well, this is the original. This is a bit restored, but
Yes.
400 years of, what is it, dust?
Almost 300
Libag?
years, no? Yeah, it's 400 years worth of, libag and,
Dust.
dust, no? Which has obscured a lot of the details of this one. This is a very, very finely crafted chair, no? If you look closely, no, they just restored one section of the chair,
Right.
and the details have come out. Look at the inlays.
Yeah,
no?
very intricate
All of these are
design.
wooden inlays, which were designed, I suppose, for aesthetic purposes, just to make it look nicer.
Yeah.
No? But because of what happened, 400 years worth of wear and tear, you
Right.
don't see the details anymore because it's been covered up.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to bring back. Bring back the history of the building through the craftsmanship of what our ancestors did when they did these things hundreds of years ago.
Well said. Yeah. When we think of Manila history, Intramuros always comes to mind. What exactly is the meaning of Intramuros?
Intramuros means inside the walls, because historically Manila had 2 parts. Everything that was inside the walls was called Intramuros, or in short, the city proper. But everything outside the walls, including where we have, for example, Chinatown or Quiapo, was referred to as extramuros. So the physical boundary of our city at that time was actually defined by these very walls.
Yeah.
So as you walk around Intramuros, you will notice that it's actually layers and layers of history. For example, in front of the walls today, we have a golf course. No, but that wasn't originally a golf course. It was actually a moat, or a body of water to protect the city walls from any attack. But in the 1900s, that purpose was already obsolete, no, because nobody was using the walls anymore. So it was turned into a golf course during the colonial American period. So you see, Intramuros is actually layers and layers and layers of history, no? Of course, good and bad, because there are even World War II guns within the walls of Intramuros.
What do you have to say about what's been done here? Would you say this is a desecration of history? For example, the gate is now used as a dartboard.
Yeah.
You have shoes being...
Yeah. Well, I just call it living history because this section of the gate today actually holds a mini precinct where you have the security of Intramuros staying around. So I guess they do have to have their own amusement in the form of darts. I guess the point here is that history does not have to be static. No, I mean, history should be lived every day in the form of a building, an old building. No? So there's a continuity. Of course, it's just a matter of how you use history in its contextual form, whether it's good or bad.
What about in terms of zoning? There aren't really clear zoning regulations here, so some of the old buildings are being desecrated.
Yeah. In fact, there is a zoning in Intramuros that before you need to build, you can build a building in Intramuros, you have to ask permission, and your design has to be approved by the governing body, which is the Intramuros administration. So it has to follow essentially the design of a certain period, notably the late 1800s of the Spanish colonial era. Intramuros today, of course, it's not the same as it was when it was really an actual city. It's really more of a historic district, no, with tourist facilities, no, where you can visit a slice of Manila's past. At the same time, it's also a living community because you do have schools in Intramuros. In fact, a lot of the old historic schools started there, like for example, Santo Tomas University, so did Ateneo. So slowly and slowly, even after decades apart, no, we are still trying to pick up and rebuild what was destroyed in our history.
Okay, we'll see more of the city then.
Yes.
Yung Fort Santiago, ito ay ating pambansang dambana ng kalayaan. Ito ay dineclare ni President Quirino, no, na para ma-preserve. Personal to sa akin kasi when I think about my freedom, no, yung kalayaan ko, lagi kong na-associate sa lugar na ito. Kasi hindi ako magiging malaya ngayon, kundi dahil sa sakripisyo ng napakaraming tao na namatay dito sa lugar na ito. So there are a lot of stories like this, ano, na, you know, dahil ikaw lumaban sa kolonyalismo, para ka sa kalayaan, pinasok ka doon, ano. Talagang nararapat lamang na lahat ng mga bata ay pumunta dito. Kasi ito yung nagpapakita ng kabayanihan, katapangan ng mga Pilipino.
The heart of downtown Manila, there's something about this chaotic city that really, you know, brings, I don't know, some kind of nostalgia to the Filipino. Tell us about this area.
Well, this is the Binondo Santa Cruz area, which is a part of the old downtown. No? Now, historically, this was considered as extramuros in the 1700s because this was outside the walls of Intramuros. By the 1900s, this area became the commercial districts of Manila. And that's why a lot of our economic and commercial activities in our city at the time happened here in this area.
What happened to the city, you know, where it was once so beautiful, suddenly you see poverty all around, the place wasn't really taken care of?
Well, Manila just grew big and bigger. Unfortunately, when it grew big, not everything was planned. So you had old districts like these where it used to be you had very buzzing economic activities, but now they all kind of went down because we had new developments which kind of left these areas untapped. No? So the buildings are still there. For most part, you can still feel the historicity of the downtown core, but with a less economic buzz because a lot of the businesses have moved to the suburbs or to the newer developments.
So if you talk about feeling that old, the history, for example, this building is a 1920s Art Deco building.
Yes.
So point out maybe some of these other right here in our horizon.
That is the Santa Cruz Church, no? And that is called the Roman Santos building. No, it's one of those banks back from the 1900s.
Right.
So you see layers and layers and layers of history. You know, if Intramuros was all 17, 1800s, this was the first stage in which the city grew out of the wall. So a lot of the buildings here actually date back to the late 1800s and to the colonial American period, which is roughly the 20th century.
This area, Escolta, this used to be the famous shopping street,
Yes.
right?
No?
How is it being revived?
Well, Escolta, for the last 150 years, was the most famous shopping street in Manila. No? Of course, it being the shopping street, it was also kind of like a stage for creativity for a lot of the architects at that time in the 20th century who were trying to, you know, create something new and assert their identity as Manilans and Filipinos. So you have a lot of the buildings here which are done by famous architects of our time. Like, for example, the building where we're on right now, it was done by Andres Luna de San Pedro, who was the son of the famed painter Juan Luna. No? So these are architectural history. And you see from the style of the buildings in Escolta and in Manila in general that history is alive not just through textbook dates, not just through people, not just through events, but also with how the city developed in the form of its architecture.
Yeah.
You know, the street layout, no? What style did they use at the time, and all of it adds up to the whole overall character of the city.
Right. Well, a lot of beautiful architecture that we see in the old city. What would you say is the state of historical buildings and preservation here in Manila, the old city?
Well, I'm hoping it could be better. No, in general, the state of these old buildings in our city hasn't fared well in our times. No,
Why is that?
I mean, you would think that of all the cities in the metropolitan area, Manila being the oldest and being the most historically significant, would realize it as an asset.
Right.
No, I mean, not just for tourism, no, but in general, just to improve the lives of the people. But unfortunately, that's not the case.
Yeah.
So a lot of the buildings today in Manila, the old ones, they're either being torn down, or they're not being taken care of, or people are just moving to the suburbs.
Yeah.
No? So the very essence of what makes a city viable, the people,
Right.
no? It's being shifted away.
Yeah.
No? Only because the city has not being, it's not being taken care of. The
Yeah.
streets are a little bit dirtier, or a little bit grittier. No? I wish we could do more, but there are a lot of efforts which are being done by individuals in helping revive the old districts of our city.
So these are the small community efforts like what's
Yes.
being done in Escolta.
Yes, that's also what's being done in Escolta. What they're trying to do essentially is that they banded together these building owners to help revive the street, thus conserving whatever old architecture that they have.
Right.
You know, because if you tear down an old building, it's lost forever.
Yeah.
And you know, these buildings, they give the city its historical, not even just charm, but also it gives the city the history
Right.
that it needs to prove that it's actually a historical city.
Yeah.
Because you look at the architecture, you look at the different styles, then you know that this city has been through a lot.
Yeah.
And this city has so much stories to tell.
Right.
But of course, we cannot just be stuck in textbook history. I mean, history at one point, I mean, it's nice to know them. It's nice to have an old building. However, you do need to make it relevant to our times. And these buildings, like what they have in Escolta, need to be occupied and need to be used in our modern context in 2014.
So you don't think it's a problem if, for example, even the old Intramuros buildings are used to be a bar, a cafe, even call centers are putting up office here?
We don't, I'm not against development, no? That's the general thought. You see, when you conserve an old building, you stop it from development. No, we love development, but it's just the right kind of development, which will conserve whatever important feature that you have on the district, for example, or on the street.
Yeah.
No? Like buildings which were done by architects, famous architects of our time, like the First United Building where we are right now. That is the type of development that we want for Manila. I mean, something that balances history with modern needs.
Yes.
But in order to do that, you need the help of not just the building owners, but in general, the community, the local government unit, which is very, very important.
Very
no?
important,
We need
yeah.
foresight, and we need
Right.
people who will lead us.
Exactly.
I wish we could do more on that aspect.
Yeah. Well, what do you think is the strength of Manila as a city? I mean, of course, when you think of the Philippines, we know the capital Manila, but
Yeah.
somehow other cities are more popular, like the CBD, you know,
Yes.
Makati,
Yes,
BGC.
no? Well, the strength of Manila has always been its lineage, you know. I mean, it's a very historic city. A lot of our roots, no, as a people, like for example, big companies who started their businesses here, families who started their businesses here, happened in this city. Like for example, my grandfather, when he migrated from China in 1935, it was in Binondo where he started. No, so more than the attachment, no, I think the strength of Manila is in its experience, in its layers of history, no.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that asset of this heritage, no, these old buildings, these streets which are full of life, has not been tapped to its fullest potential.
Right.
No, because people think that new is better, which is not really
Yeah.
bad. No, however, let's not do it at the expense of the old city.
Yes.
No, and we need to really keep the spirit of the city alive
Yeah.
by living in it. No, at the same time, using the old buildings
Yeah.
that were built in the old days as something more relevant to us.
Right. Well, you grew up here, no? So you've
Yes.
seen the city, the face of the city change through the years.
Yes.
What for you really is the best part? You know, what would you like to keep?
Well, I have this love-hate relationship with Manila, and I've been, I say that because I've been fortunate enough to have been to so many cities around the world. And when you go abroad and you visit a very famous old city, you always question and you look back, how come my city is not that way? I mean, it's not as if we don't have any resources. I mean, we have a very unique cultural mix in Manila. We have Tagalog, we have Spanish, we have Chinese, no? And yet, it's not being tapped, no? The thing with me is that I grew up in this neighborhood, this Binondo, for 8 years, no? I studied in a district called San Miguel,
Yeah.
which is still part of the old city. It's beside Malacanang. I worked in Intramuros for 10 years as a volunteer. I studied in Malate. So everything is very personal for me.
Right.
So when I see, garbage on the street, it really kind of
Yeah.
pains me that, what are we doing to our city?
Exactly.
No? But that said, I do have my positive moments when I see people like the folks in Escolta banding together and really trying to improve this place, not just for us, but for the next generation. No? At the same time, tapping it in its potential, in its
Yes.
heritage potential, in its
Yeah.
history, the architecture, and trying to make it more relevant for our generation.
And how can we forget food? Now, a big aspect of Old
Yes.
Manila is Chinatown. A lot of
Of
us know
course.
it for its food. This Chinatown is the oldest Chinatown in the world, isn't it? Binondo.
I'm not sure of the world, but at least in our country.
Okay.
No? And that's the thing with Binondo. No? You see, Binondo is like a microcosm of what Manila used to be. No? Because if you go to Binondo, the streets are still teeming with bustle.
Yes.
You have the
So
businesses,
colorful.
you have the street stalls, you have folks who just do their stuff, who sell things, you have restaurants now. Somehow, this type of bustle we have lost in the other parts of Manila owing to development. Like, for example, the malls. No? I don't hate malls, but I do wish that our old districts like Quiapo, Binondo, that people would still patronize that bustle, that interaction with the city.
Right.
Because you are shopping on the very streets that our ancestors shopped at,
Yes.
not in the mall. No, you ate the food that they ate at, and I think these are very good draws if you are tourists.
Yes.
However, these areas are not promoted as much. No,
Why is
apart
that?
from
Why do you-
Intramuros, which is like your one-stop shop for historical Manila.
Right.
Why is it? I don't really know. Maybe because
Becomes more commercial.
it's not even that. Maybe because for some people there's this inherent fear of it being the old city. It might be a little bit more riskier than going to the mall.
Yeah.
No? But if you look at it in other countries, these are the exact things that cities are trying to promote.
Yeah.
Wet markets, street
Yes.
markets, no? Local color, no? You don't see them promoting the malls, no? I think it's all about impression as well, no? A lot of us today, those who did not grow up in Manila, they kind of have this fear of coming to the old city, which is not really invalid because we do have not so good elements in sections of it, no?
Yeah, it's not
But
all
I
the
think we
same.
need to magnify the positive aspects of these places more than the negative parts.
Yeah.
And we are trying our best to do our, to revive the people, at least through our tours that
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
no?
1961, 100 years ng birth of Dr. Jose Rizal, ay pinainting ni Carlos Botong Francisco ang wall painting na ito na nagpapakita ng last moment sa kanyang buhay. Paglilitis niya, last meeting with the family. Pero yung interesting dito, yung depiction ng pagkamatay ni Rizal. No? Kasi kapag binaril ka ng patalikod, yun ay kamatayan na walang dangal kasi diretsong mukha mo sa lupa. Kaya yung mga taksil sa Spanya, yun yung pagpatay sa kanila, nakatalikod. So, ayaw ni Rizal yun. Gusto niya mamatay siya ng may dangal. At sinulat niya na yun. Gusto kong ipakita sa mga kalaban natin na ang Pilipino ay kayang mamatay para sa kanyang mga pinaglalaban.
Well, let's talk more about Chinatown. The history, of course, apart from the food and the shopping.
Yes, yes.
This really played a big role in the growth of Manila.
Yes, well, Binondo was, I would say it was probably the second most important district in Manila after Intramuros. For 400 years, Binondo was the center of trade and commerce in our city. So in effect, it kind of fed Intramuros, and Intramuros fed to Binondo because these things complemented each other as a place, no? Unfortunately, Intramuros was destroyed during World War II. A lot of it was bombed, and so was Binondo. And so the community which kept Intramuros, which gave Intramuros its identity, the church, the old families there, a lot of them moved to the newer suburbs, like Makati. So if you look at it, Intramuros now is a tourist attraction, but it's not as bustling as, let's say, Binondo.
Yeah.
Because Binondo, apart for all its modernization, no, a lot of the buildings were torn down, the community is still there. So when you go there, you will still see street markets. You will still see, restaurants which have been there for over 100 years. No, which is more than the buildings. It's really also the essence of what a community is all
The
about.
community is very important in keeping
Yes.
heritage alive.
No. Well, Binondo, for most part, it's still largely a Chinoy community. No. Of course, a lot of them have moved out, but you can still feel it. No, in the trade that it's being done, in the restaurants, in the businesses. I grew up there for 8 years. No, so it's a very personal place for me.
Yeah.
I grew up running on its streets, playing on its very streets, which were not really scary for me. It's not even scary even today, no? And so I grew up with seeing all these old buildings, all these bahay na batos, no? Which I guess, for me, it kind of became part of my system.
So it was natural to you, the sense of history just came with...
I suppose yes, because I grew up in this heart, in the heart of the old city. Of course, one of our popular tours today in the Old Manila Walk series is called the Big Binondo Food Walk, wherein we try to reintroduce people to these historic neighborhoods with its assets. In the case of Binondo, the food.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the most well-loved food neighborhoods in our city. There's over 150 restaurants in Binondo. And I think people are rediscovering it today because you now get people, I mean, I've seen a lot of kids, young ones, or tourists with, with cameras. They just go around taking photos, just eating in the restaurants, just admiring the buildings. No? So I think slowly we are trying to get the people back to these neighborhoods.
It's also very multi-ethnic. It's not really just the Chinese that's there.
Which is what most people do not realize, no? Because a lot of the sellers are actually Kapampangan.
Right.
So, and this area of Manila, the old downtown, starting from Intramuros to Quiapo, this is where you see, without realizing it, you actually see a reflection, mix-up of our people and the legacies, no? You start with Intramuros, which is the Spanish colonial.
Right.
And then you move to Binondo, which is the Chinese. You move to Quiapo, which is Tagalog. And then in Quiapo, you also have the Muslim Quarter, which is right beside the most Catholic church in our city, the Nazareno Basilica, no? So, I mean, if you walk from end to end, you see these little neighborhoods, they change. And come to think of it, it's kind of a reflection of who we are as a people, no? With different ethnicities, different faiths. I wish we could do more for the other districts like Quiapo, for example, no? Because we need major cleaning up in Quiapo. Just so maybe we could use tourism, no, as one of the tools, not exactly the tool, but one of the tools in bringing back life to these neighborhoods, improving the lives of the people who are there, contributing to their businesses, no, and thus helping contribute to the overall character of the neighborhood.
And what you're doing also is showing us that we get to know history through different aspects. It's
Yes.
not just old buildings, churches,
Exactly,
it's
no?
through the food,
Yes,
through the people.
yes.
through the people.
Well, our philosophy in Old Manila Walks has always been engaging history. No?
Yeah.
It's not just the dates. The dates are important, fine. It's not just textbook history, but it's history that is engaging our senses. No?
Yes.
You walk the very streets which Jose Rizal walked. You try the food which you probably ate 100 years ago.
Jose Rizal used to walk from Intramuros to Binondo.
Yes, he
right?
did, no? Because his family had a house in Binondo. His mother had a house in Binondo. And before Jose Rizal was buried at Luneta Park, his bones were actually kept in his mother's house in Binondo.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I love these
Unfortunately,
bits of trivia.
you know, the house where Jose Rizal's mother lived, Teodora Alonso, is not there anymore. But you do have markers.
Yes, so these are the hidden historical markers
historical markers
around the city.
around Manila. I mean, they're not in a grand building, but something happened there. And all of these little narratives, it all adds up to that big story of our people. No? And that is how, I mean, for that reason alone, I think this whole area should really, you know, we should really conserve and help, you know, and preserve the relics of our past.
Yeah.
Yung heritage, we translate it to Tagalog dun sa salitang pamana. At pagmana, kayamanan yan. Ito'y bagay na mahalaga sa ating mga ninuno. Yung mana, isinasalin ito sa susunod na salin lahi. Ganon siya kahalaga. At pinagpapasa-pasa from one generation to another. Kung ako yung magpapamana, di ba hindi ko naman pamamanahan yung taong hindi marunong mag-alaga ng kayamanan, yung wawaldasin lang yung kayamanan ko, no? So, sa totoo lang, ganon din yung mga heritage natin. The old houses, yung kaugalian natin, the festivals, the museums, the artifacts, no? Lahat yan ay bigay sa atin ng mga ninuno natin. Sapagkat sinabi na ni Jose Rizal sa kanyang Filipinas dentro de 100 años, no? Philippines in 100 years, na para malaman mo kung anong mangyayari at magiging tadhana ng bayan mo, kailangang buksan ang aklat na nagsasabi ng nakaraan. Kaya mahalaga ang kasaysayan.
This is something very unique to Old Manila Walks. That
Yes.
you said it's a full sensual experience. You started this in 2005.
Yes.
How has it grown since then? How has it changed?
Well, we have had over 15,000 people walk with us. We have done special tours. No? Our tours are not just for tourists. No? We've used this as a tool for education a lot.
Yeah.
No? For kids who wanted alternative education. No? Walking on the very streets of the old streets of our ancestors. No? We've done TV many times. And we have done literature. No? We actually have a map that we're producing so that people can explore more of Binondo. We're trying to popularize history in the way that we know. No? Not just through a very academic setting, no? But in in a way which engages people and makes it fun for them and makes them live history without being too overly nostalgic
Yes.
about it. It's living history. The
Right.
city is living history.
Definitely engages the youth, but do you think
Yes.
there are some drawbacks to popularizing history? Some people say it's a bit of watering down
Yes,
facts.
yeah.
What would you say to that?
Well, of course, there are many ways of interpreting history. No, we don't claim to be the expert, but what we're doing essentially is, I mean, it's part of my personal history because, as I mentioned, I grew up on these very
Yeah.
streets, and I happen to have a deep interest in the history of our city. No,
Yeah.
I think history should be lived. I mean, shouldn't just be taught in school. It should be lived every day, if possible. Like, for example, when you live in an old house and you do your ways to make sure that that house is properly maintained, that is also a form of propagating history because you are helping conserve an asset, a historical relic, no, that was probably built there 150 years ago that we don't do anymore today. No? So you don't have to be very textbook about it, really.
Yes.
No? I mean, there are a lot of ways of propagating it. I've done talks, no? Talks on certain districts, no? Of Manila. And that's my way of sharing to people my interest and my passion
Right.
in this place.
It's always good to keep on learning, and that's what you're
Yes.
doing. You are completing your master's in
Yes.
cultural heritage
Yes,
studies.
I'm doing my, I'm on my last semester for this very academic subject called Cultural Heritage Studies
At UST, of course, the
Santo
oldest.
Tomas. It's at the oldest university in the country. Essentially, our course is training you to use culture in different applications.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to do culture with law, for
Right.
example, if you want to create laws that govern culture, you can do that. If you want to do research, like archival research on a certain district to produce books and all that,
Right.
you can also do that.
Yes.
For me, I want to use culture as an entrepreneurial tool
Yeah.
in the form of tourism.
Right.
No? Because I think tourism is one of the easiest ways to get people to look at that heritage
I agree.
and feel it without
Yes.
having to be too academic
Yes.
because it's experiential.
Right.
Yes.
Well, you've done so many great tours, and you continue to do so. What would you like to see happen? What are you hoping to even, maybe possible new projects, or
Okay.
hoping that the Filipinos will come to see in terms of history and tourism?
We want to do more tours, but on a personal note, I want to see a better Manila.
Yeah.
No? A cleaner Manila. If you think about it, a lot of the things that we have with our problems today in Manila, they're all basic things. Cleanliness, discipline, no? And you know, if we send this message to the people who live here and make our neighborhoods better, that's also your way of contributing to the propagation of our history. No? You don't have to give us dates. You just need to make sure that the building that your ancestor built is actually well maintained, that you're using it. But how do we do that? We need to make our environment and our communities
Right.
good.
Yeah.
Cleaning,
Exactly.
you know.
Very
so
simple.
very simple things,
Yeah.
no, not big things,
Yeah.
no motherhood statements, no, but just everyday things.
Yeah. So little things we can do every day to celebrate our independence. And
Yes.
Pinoy pride, because Pinoy
Exactly.
pride has kind of become
Yeah.
overused.
Yes,
no?
exactly. I mean, it's so easy to say I'm proud to be a Filipino, and yet
Yeah.
you litter.
Yes.
No, I mean, for me, I don't even say that. No, you just do what you want to do, and that pride in your history will eventually show.
Right.
No?
You give tours to both Filipinos and foreigners. Do you
Yes.
find that foreigners seem to even appreciate what the tours more?
Yes, surprisingly, a lot of our tours are mostly locals.
Oh.
It's, I would say 80% of those who join our tours are locals, which I'm very happy about because the tours are initially geared towards locals. Metro Manilans, because the city has grown so big. Like if you live in the suburbs like Alabang, no,
Yes.
you probably did not grow up in Quiapo or Binondo. It kind of gives you a sense of history that, hey, you know what, this is where our city started.
Yeah.
So we do a lot of local tourists, and then we get foreign tourists as well. Well, for the foreign tourists, same reaction, no? Because you know you come to these areas and it shows you a slice of who we are
Right.
as Manileños.
Yes.
No, as Manileños.
Yeah. when we look again at the city scene, you know, we have the Estero here, but still the beautiful buildings. Some people say that Manila is a dying city, but you know, you see the life on the streets. What do you say to that? What is happening to Manila? What can you see in Manila's future?
Well, I cannot afford to say Manila is a dying city, even if I wanted to, because I actually live in Manila.
Yes.
No, I grew up here for the last 30 plus years of my life. So I cannot say that.
You know that it's thriving.
The day I say that, that day, you know, I'll probably die. No?
Well, the city has survived so many wars,
yes,
natural
yes.
calamities, floods.
Yeah, I think in the overall context of the metropolitan area, we just need to bring the luster back to the old city. And by that, not by building spanking new malls, no, because we can build that in the suburbs, but by bringing back the old bustle, old life of the city in a modern context. No? Escolta used to be a street for the old rich, but we don't have to bring back the old rich. We can bring, you know, middle class people, that's fine, as long as they are in context with who we are today. As long as the buildings are conserved, you know, they will patronize the street stalls, no?
Right.
We just need buzz, and we just need a little bit more love, you know, for the city.
Yeah. So in terms of partnerships, collaborations, what would be the ideal setup for Manila if we want to really keep these buildings intact?
Ideally, it should be a community effort with a lot of support from the LGU. Because like it or not, we need to work with the local government unit. No? A lot of the efforts that I've been seeing in reviving these old districts have been privately run, no? Initiated. So we're doing our bit as a private citizen. I'm doing my bit in promoting tourism. We need just more help from the LGU and more understanding.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Ivan. Thank you for sharing your time and for all you do for the city.
Thank you.
As Nick Joaquin says in Manila, My Manila, the history of Manila can be put into 3 words: challenge and response. He writes, it almost seems as if every problem, every crisis arises just to prove the aliveness of the city, continually destroyed and continually rebuilt, ever decaying and ever regreening. As we've seen today, challenges abound in Manila, but so do responses to those challenges. The future is uncertain, but one thing's for sure. Manila, our Manila, is alive, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. I'm Mitzi Borromeo. Thanks for watching News Cafe.
Sa karanasan ko po, hindi na ba nakasalanan ng video?